My parents didn't call when I got married. They didn't text. They didn't show up. 3 empty chairs sat in the front row of my wedding ceremony while strangers smiled at me with pity burning in their eyes. 2 years of silence followed until a $135,000 Porsche appeared on my Instagram feed. Then suddenly, my mother's voice was on the other end of the line, tight and rehearsed, telling me we needed to have a family meeting. I said yes. But this time, I didn't come empty-handed. Growing up in suburban Oregon, I learned early that family meant Reed. Everything in our middle-class household revolved around my older brother. His trophies lined the mantle, his report cards got framed, his future was discussed at every dinner table like we were planning the succession of a dynasty instead of just living our lives. Dad called him the future of the Monroe name with this reverence in his voice that made it sound like we had some legacy to protect. We didn't. We were ordinary people with an ordinary house, but Reed made them feel extraordinary. I was just Phoebe, the quiet one. The helper. The daughter who supposedly had her head on straight, which really meant I didn't require the same attention, the same investment, the same love. I used to sit cross-legged on our living room floor, sketchbook balanced on my knees, drawing while they rearranged the mantle to accommodate Reed's latest award. The smell of Dad's aftershave mixed with the sharp click of Mom's camera as she documented every victory, every moment of his success. Those sounds are burned into my memory like scars you can't see but never stop feeling. My art certificate, the one my teacher said showed exceptional promise, ended up shoved in a kitchen drawer under old coupons and forgotten takeout menus. I remember asking, voice barely above a whisper, if they'd come to my school art show that week. Mom didn't look up from the stove. We'll see, honey. Reed's got regionals. That was our rhythm. His needs first, my dreams somewhere in the distance, fading. Even when I got a full scholarship to Stanford, full ride, everything covered, the first thing Dad said was, "That's great, Phoebe. Maybe Reed can transfer there too." Like my achievement was only valuable if it could somehow benefit my brother. It became almost funny after a while, the way their praise always circled back to him. So I learned to stop asking for it. I learned to make my silence look like strength, to smile like being invisible didn't hurt, to pretend I didn't need what they gave him so freely. Years later, when I met Julian, he saw through it immediately. We were sitting in a coffee shop, and I was telling some story about my childhood, probably editing out the painful parts like I always did. "You talk about them like they're ghosts," he said, studying my face. Maybe they always were. Still, when I called to tell them about the wedding, some stupid, hopeful part of me wanted to believe they'd show up. That maybe this would be different. That maybe I'd finally done something important enough to matter. Mom's voice on the phone was polite but detached, like she was checking items off a to-do list. "We'll try, sweetie, but Reed's firm has an event that weekend." Dad's muffled voice in the background, "Tell her we're busy." I stood by the window, phone pressed to my ear, staring at my own reflection in the glass. I was smiling too hard, like if I smiled enough, they might feel guilty. Like my forced cheerfulness might somehow shame them into caring. They didn't. The morning of my wedding, I sent one last text, "There's a seat saved for you in the front row." No reply. When the vineyard doors opened that afternoon, sunlight poured across 90 guests who turned to look at me. The air smelled of white roses and champagne, sweet and perfect. Julian waited at the altar, his eyes full of a love that almost covered the hollow space inside my chest. Those 3 chairs stayed empty through the entire ceremony. When we kissed, I heard someone whisper, "She's so strong." I wanted to tell them I wasn't strong. I was just used to it. Later, at the reception, Kate raised her glass and said, "To finding the family who deserves you." Everyone cheered. I laughed. But deep down, something in me cracked wide open, and I wasn't sure I'd ever be able to close it again. 2 years passed. I built a life that didn't need their approval, at least that's what I told myself every morning when I woke up and checked my phone, half hoping to see their names on my screen. Portland in the fall had this gray, determined kind of beauty, like the whole city was hustling through fog that never quite lifted. My office sat on the 21st floor, glass walls overlooking the river where boats moved like slow thoughts through dark water. The day the acquisition closed, my screen flashed the words that changed everything. Meridian Studio sold. $21 million. $21 million. For the company I'd built from nothing. My team burst through the door with champagne, shouting and laughing. To Phoebe Monroe, Morgan yelled, the woman who built something from nothing. Glasses clinked. Music blasted from someone's phone. For a few hours, I let myself feel it, the weight of every late night, every rejection, every quiet win that nobody saw because nobody was watching. When the office finally emptied and I sat alone, the city lights reflected in the glass made everything look like a dream. Without really thinking about it, I opened Instagram and posted a photo of my new Porsche, tan metallic gray, parked outside my house, gleaming under the streetlights. The caption read, "Dreams realized." It wasn't bragging. It was proof to myself that I'd done it without them. 3 days later, my phone buzzed during a morning meeting. Unknown number, Oregon area code. For a second, I thought it might be a journalist wanting to interview me about the acquisition. I answered anyway. Phoebe. My mother's voice, soft and careful, like she was walking on broken glass. I froze. 5 years. Not a call, not a text, not a birthday message. 5 years of complete silence. Mom. We need to talk. Family meeting tomorrow, 2 o'clock. I laughed once, a sound sharper than I meant it to be. After 5 years of silence, now you want a meeting? It's important, she said, clipped and businesslike, like a manager scheduling a performance review. In the background, I heard Dad tell her, it's urgent. I could picture them standing in that same old colonial hallway, calculating the size of my success before deciding exactly how to use it. What's this about? I asked, though I already knew. Her pause told me everything. We'll explain tomorrow. When the line went dead, I stared at my phone for a long minute. I didn't feel anger or nostalgia or even hurt. Just a dull, heavy understanding. They hadn't changed. They'd seen the car. They'd done the math. They'd decided I was finally worth their time. Julian looked up from his laptop across the table. Everything okay? I turned my phone face down. My mom wants a family meeting. He studied me with those eyes that saw everything I tried to hide. You going to go? Yeah, I said slowly. I think it's time. That night, I sat on the edge of our bed, scrolling back through old photos on my phone. My wedding bouquet. My team's first office. The Porsche under the sunset. 3 snapshots of my life, each one missing the same faces. My mother once said I was too independent for my own good. Maybe she was right. But independence was the only thing that ever showed up for me. I opened my laptop and drafted an email to my attorney, need to review trust documentation by tomorrow morning. Because if they were calling a family meeting, I'd be walking in with something stronger than guilt. The next morning, I woke before the alarm. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the sound of Julian grinding coffee in the kitchen. I dressed like armor, navy suit, low bun, heels that clicked with intent. Julian handed me a mug, steam rising between us. You don't have to go. I do, I said, slipping my phone into my bag. But this time, I'm not going as their daughter. He nodded once. Remember who you are. The drive to my childhood home took 40 minutes. October light filtered through the trees, soft but cold. Every mile felt like peeling back a layer I'd worked hard to grow over the wounds underneath. The closer I got, the tighter my chest became, like my body was trying to protect me from what was coming. When the house came into view, it looked smaller than I remembered, like time had shrunk it down to size. The white shutters, the brick porch, the same hydrangeas Mom used to water every evening, it all looked preserved, untouched by guilt. She opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes flicked past me, straight to the Porsche in the driveway. You've done well for yourself, she said. No, hello. No, I've missed you. Yes, I answered. Nothing more. Inside, the air smelled like lemon polish and control. The dining room table was already set, papers stacked neatly beside Dad's coffee mug. He sat at the head like it was a board meeting, not a family gathering. Reed and his wife Samantha were already there, faces arranged in polite masks of concern that didn't quite reach their eyes. Phoebe. Dad's voice carried the same authority it always did, the tone that used to make me shrink. We appreciate you coming on short notice. I didn't realize I had a choice, I said, taking the only empty chair. He cleared his throat. Your brother's been dealing with some financial setbacks. The twins' tuition is behind, and their house, well, the mortgage is overdue. I folded my hands on the table and waited. And this involves me how? Mom jumped in, her voice trembling on cue. You're the one who's stable now. We thought maybe you could help. Just until things turn around. Family helps family, Reed added, leaning forward like a salesman closing a deal. Then Dad slid a folder across the table. Here's the loan paperwork. We've already filled in most of it. For convenience. My name stared back at me from the signature line. Something inside me went completely still. Convenient, I said quietly. You must have been planning this meeting for a while. Mom's eyes darted to Dad. Don't be dramatic, Phoebe. We're asking, not demanding. I looked at her, really looked at her. Really? Because it feels like a setup. Reed scoffed. You always think you're being attacked. You made your money. Now act like family and share. Dad placed a hand on Reed's shoulder, steadying him. Phoebe, we invested everything in you and your education. This is your chance to give back. I almost laughed. You mean the education I paid for with scholarships? Because you didn't want to co-sign my loans. Silence dropped like a stone. Mom's voice dropped to that pleading whisper I used to crumble for. Think about your nieces, sweetheart. They shouldn't suffer because of this. Her words hit the air like a trap, perfectly laid. I stood slowly, walked to the window, and stared out at the neatly trimmed lawn. The same swing set where Reed once pushed me off for fun was still there, paint faded, rope frayed. Some things never changed. I turned back to them, calm now. Where were you at my wedding? Reed blinked. What? My wedding. 2 years ago. Where were you? Mom's lips tightened into a thin line. We were busy. Reed had that event. Dad added without shame, it wasn't convenient. The world went quiet. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. I looked each of them in the eye, one by one. And now you're here because you saw the Porsche on Instagram. Because suddenly, I'm worth your time. No one spoke. I picked up the folder, flipped it closed, and set it back in front of Dad. You'll get your answer tomorrow. As I walked toward the door, Mom called after me. Phoebe, don't make this harder than it needs to be. I didn't turn around. It's already as hard as it's going to get. In the car, I exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. The fear was gone, replaced by something clearer, sharper. Tomorrow, they'd learn what family means when the word stops being a weapon. The next afternoon, sunlight cut across the same dining room table like a spotlight waiting for its scene. I parked the Porsche out front and let the engine purr a second longer than necessary before killing it. My heart didn't race this time. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. Mom opened the door, perfectly composed in her beige sweater set, pretending this was just an ordinary family discussion. You came. Of course, I replied. You said it was important. Dad was already seated, glasses on, papers spread across the table again. Reed lounged in his chair, tie loosened, playing the part of the wrong son. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon, Mom's attempt to soften the edges. I placed my briefcase on the table and stayed standing. Let's get started. Dad cleared his throat. Your brother's situation hasn't improved. We'd like to finalize the loan today. Before we do that, I said, sliding open the latch of my case, there's something you should see. Reed snorted. Let me guess. More photos of your car? I smiled, small, controlled. Not quite. From the case, I pulled a thick envelope and laid it on the table. The bold header read, the Sterling Media Scholarship Foundation. $16 million trust. What's this? Mom asked, her brow furrowing. A surprise, I said softly. Since we're talking about family investments, I wanted to share mine. Dad scanned the page, confusion morphing into disbelief. $16 million? Every cent, I said. Legally protected, dedicated to funding education for young women in digital media arts. Reed laughed, but it came out thin and desperate. You're kidding. You put $16 million into strangers? Not strangers, I said. Girls like me. Girls who were invisible in their own homes. Mom's hand trembled against the table. Phoebe, that's unwise. You could have helped your family instead of throwing it away. I clicked my phone, activating the recorder sitting beside the papers. The small red light blinked steadily. Just for transparency, I'm recording this conversation so we're all clear about who asked for what. Dad stiffened. That's unnecessary. It's essential, I said evenly. You've all made your expectations very clear. Now let me make mine. I leaned forward slightly. You missed my high school graduation. You skipped my college showcase. You ignored my wedding. Every milestone, I looked for you. And every time, you chose something else. So no, this money isn't for you. It's for the girls whose families can't see them either. Mom's voice cracked. We only did what we thought was best. No, I said quietly. You did what was convenient. Reed slammed his hand on the table. You think you're better than us because you got lucky? Lucky? I repeated, almost laughing. You think working 3 jobs through college and sleeping in my car between classes was luck? You think every door slammed in my face was luck? No, Reed. What I am is done. For a moment, no one moved. The tension hung in the air like smoke. Then I closed the folder, tucked it neatly into my briefcase, and straightened. You wanted to talk about family. Here's my definition, family shows up. And you didn't. Dad tried one last card, his voice low and threatening. Blood is thicker than water, Phoebe. Then you should have thought about that before you diluted it, I said. I walked to the doorway. Behind me, chairs scraped against the floor. You can't just walk out, Reed shouted. I turned slightly, just enough to meet his eyes. I already did. 2 years ago. The door clicked shut behind me. Outside, the air felt sharp and clean. I could hear them arguing through the walls, voices rising into a blur of anger and blame that no longer had anything to do with me. In the car, my phone lit up with a new email from Diana Ashworth, my mentor, foundation launch approved. Press release scheduled for tomorrow morning. Perfect timing. The next day, the news spread fast. The Portland Business Journal ran the headline, Self-Made Founder Turns Pain into Purpose. The photo showed me standing beside the foundation logo, confident, collected, untouchable. By noon, my inbox filled with messages. Some congratulating, some curious, a few bitter. Among them was one from Mom, you've humiliated this family. I didn't reply. That afternoon, a call came from the front desk of my building. Miss Monroe, your family's here. They're causing a scene. Through the glass walls of my office, I saw them. Mom waving her hands. Reed red-faced. Dad trying to maintain control. My team froze, eyes on me. I stood straight, adjusted my jacket. Have security escort them out, I said calmly. Politely. Mom's voice carried even through the glass. She's abandoning her family. I turned away, walking back to my desk. No, I murmured to myself. I'm saving myself. Security led them to the elevators. The moment the doors closed, the office exhaled collectively. Morgan, my creative director, whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. Better than ever. That evening, Julian poured us 2 glasses of wine on the balcony. The city lights shimmered below like stars pulled down to earth. So that's it? He asked. That's it, I said. They showed who they are. I just made sure everyone else saw it too. He smiled. Revenge, your style. Not revenge, I said, looking out at the skyline. Redefinition. The next morning, the the front page of the Chronicle featured my photo again, this time under a new headline, From Ignored Daughter to Influential Founder. Below it, a quote from my speech, "Family isn't who raises you. It's who lifts you." And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel angry. I felt seen. A week later, Portland woke to rain, the kind that coated everything in silver. I watched it slide down the tall windows of my office, the city blurred and quiet beneath the clouds. My inbox was still full of congratulations about the foundation launch, but my eyes kept drifting to one unread message. The subject line, Family Emergency. I didn't open it. Diana stopped by with coffee, her umbrella dripping by the door. "You did it," she said simply. 16 million protected and purposeful. "How does it feel?" "Different," I admitted. "Like I finally stopped auditioning for a role I never wanted." She smiled knowingly. Freedom always feels strange at first. That night, Julian and I walked home under one umbrella. For once, I didn't check my phone. The air smelled of wet cedar and possibility. A few days later, news started spreading. Reed's house foreclosed. Dad's firm under investigation for misused retirement funds. Mom selling jewelry for liquidity. The internet ate it up, but I didn't gloat. I just felt done. The noise no longer reached me. At the Women in Media Alliance Gala, I stood under soft lights in a navy gown, accepting the Business Leadership Award. Cameras flashed, but I spoke slowly, letting every word carry the weight of closure. For years, I chased approval that was never mine to earn. Now I use that energy to build something that lasts. The applause felt different than pity. It was respect. After the ceremony, a young filmmaker, barely 20, approached me, eyes shining. "Ms. Monroe, your foundation, it means everything. My parents don't believe in what I'm doing, but your story." Her voice cracked. "It makes me believe in myself again." Her words hit somewhere deep, where the old ache used to live. I placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't need their permission to be brilliant." Back at home, the award sat on our mantle where Reed's trophies used to dominate their space. Julian caught me staring at it. "You good?" I nodded. Better than I thought I'd ever be. The next morning, I opened the family emergency email at last. It wasn't an apology, just Mom's familiar tone, polished and manipulative. "We're struggling. Maybe we can talk." I drafted one line in response, "When you start therapy, we can talk." Then I hit send and closed the laptop. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Sunlight pushed through the clouds, glinting off the edges of the city like something reborn. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. A year later, I stood inside the Sterling Foundation's new studio. White walls, glass ceilings, sunlight spilling over rows of cameras and laptops. Laughter echoed through the space as the first class of scholarship recipients worked on their short films. I watched one girl adjust her lens with the same nervous focus I once had. Sage, our youngest scholar, looked up and smiled. "Ms. Monroe, can you check this frame?" I leaned beside her, adjusting the light just a touch. "Perfect. You're seeing the world exactly how it should be seen." Behind us, a banner read, "Family isn't who raises you. It's who lifts you." Julian arrived with coffee in hand, his grin easy and proud. "They're doing incredible work. They're doing what I wish someone had helped me do," I replied, watching Sage hit record with confidence I'd had to build alone. Outside the studio, I could see my reflection in the glass, steady, calm, whole. There were no missing faces in this picture, no empty chairs, no unreturned calls. Just a woman who stopped asking to be chosen and started choosing herself. That night, I posted a photo of the foundation team with a caption that said it all. "Some families are built, not born." Thanks for listening, and if this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment about your own journey of choosing yourself, and subscribe for more stories about finding strength when family fails you. Because the family you choose will always matter more than the family that chose to look away.